What if the secret to becoming one of the richest men alive wasn't money at all? We often think success comes from luck, talent, or being born into wealth. But Warren Buffett, today worth over $100 billion, started as a boy from Omaha with nothing but curiosity, discipline, and a dream. His story isn't just about money. It's about how choices, patience, and vision can turn an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. Picture a young boy in 1930s Nebraska, going door-to-door selling bottles of Coca-Cola and packs of gum for pennies. He wasn't the fastest, the strongest, or the most popular kid, but he had something rare, an eye for value and a mind that never stopped asking, "What's the smarter way to do this?" Years later, he bought his first stock at just 11 years old. The market went up, then crashed, and young Warren panicked, selling too soon, missing a huge gain. That mistake became his greatest lesson: patience. Through decades, while the world chased quick riches, Buffett studied, waited, and invested with calm conviction. He turned small sums into millions, millions into billions, never through shortcuts, but through discipline, consistency, and seeing opportunity where others only saw risk. Today, Warren Buffett isn't just a billionaire. He is proof that success is built not in a single moment, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of good choices repeated over a lifetime. His life whispers to us all, you don't need to be extraordinary to achieve greatness. You only need to be consistent. The 1930s in Omaha, Nebraska, were heavy with dust and despair. The streets whispered stories of loss, of men standing outside factories with empty lunch pails, and women lining up at markets hoping for scraps. The Great Depression had tightened its grip, turning every corner of the city into a test of patience and survival. Money had become a ghost, scarce and fleeting, and every coin jingled with the weight of hope. In a modest, weathered house on a quiet street lived a boy named Warren. His ears were slightly large, his round glasses perched precariously on his nose, and his eyes held a strange spark that few noticed, let alone understood. While other children ran freely in dusty alleys, Warren's mind was a labyrinth of numbers, probabilities, and questions no one had asked. He watched coins spin, watched doors open and close, watched life in miniature, as if the world were a board game, waiting for him to decode its rules. The house itself was simple, almost bare. Wooden walls creaked with the wind, paint peeling in jagged strips. At night, the draft seemed to whisper the city's pain, loneliness, hunger, uncertainty. His father, Howard Buffett, worked as a stockbroker, but the depression had shaken even his fragile livelihood. Every evening he returned home with the exhaustion of a man carrying the weight of failure. His mother, Layla, carried the household on her shoulders, her smiles often masking worry lines etched deep from fear of the unknown. Young Warren would watch her pray quietly at night, hands clasped, eyes closed, lips moving with silent hope, and he learned early the power of unseen faith. Despite the hardships, Warren noticed patterns others missed. While his peers chased sticks or threw pebbles at the street, he counted coins, measured the stretch of bread, watched the ebb and flow of people moving through the city. To him, there was a rhythm in scarcity, a lesson hidden in every careful ration and every hurried decision. He began cataloging his observations, drawing lines between cause and effect, wondering how small actions could ripple into big consequences. At 6 years old, Warren had already begun his first ventures into business. He sold chewing gum, soda bottles, and other small items door to door, learning the delicate balance of value and exchange. Each transaction was a lesson, each disappointment a teacher. When someone refused to buy, he studied their hesitation. When someone accepted, he celebrated silently, noting the patterns that made one choice successful over another. His tiny world was transforming, shaped not by toys or games, but by understanding how money, patience, and human behavior intertwined. Even in the shadows of poverty, Warren felt a thrill at possibility. While most saw hardship, he saw opportunity, a puzzle waiting to be solved. This was the first spark of a mind that would one day decode markets, investments, and the subtleties of wealth itself. And though he was small, and the world seemed overwhelmingly vast, the boy from Omaha was learning the first, most important lesson: observation, patience, and a hunger to understand could outmatch brute strength or luck. By the age of 6, Warren Buffett's world was already divided between the mundane struggles of daily survival and the endless possibilities that flickered in his mind. While other children played games of tag or marbles, Warren's playground was the streets of Omaha, lined with houses and shops, each doorway a potential customer, each coin a lesson in human behavior. He carried with him a small, tattered bag filled with gum, soda bottles, and any tiny items he thought he could sell. Every morning, he would set out with a mixture of determination and curiosity, stepping into a world that was both unforgiving and full of opportunity. Howard and Layla Buffett watched their son with a mixture of pride and worry. Howard understood the city's harsh realities better than most, and he knew that teaching Warren too early about money could either ignite ambition or burden the child with anxiety. But Warren seemed drawn naturally toward numbers, toward the rhythm of transactions, toward understanding how the world valued small things. He learned to read faces, to gauge hesitation, to predict a yes before it was even spoken. Each interaction became a miniature experiment, and each small success became a quiet triumph in his young heart. One morning, Warren decided to expand his little enterprise. He borrowed $5 from his father, no small sum in those days, and purchased a bulk lot of penny candies from a local store. The smell of sugar and wax filled his tiny satchel as he walked the streets, arranging his little packets on the worn curb in neat rows. Children from the neighborhood came running, their eyes wide at the colorful display. Warren sold his first handful of candies, and for the first time, he felt the thrill of profit, the intoxicating mixture of work, risk, and reward. But he also noticed the subtle frustrations. Some kids haggled, some refused, and some ran off without paying. Each response was a lesson, a puzzle he needed to solve. By noon, Warren had earned enough to buy a second round of supplies. He observed carefully which candies sold fastest, which colors and flavors attracted attention, and which streets brought the most customers. He started keeping mental notes, where to stand, what to say, how to smile, even which houses seemed more likely to buy. His little experiments were more than just a way to earn a few coins. They were shaping his mind, teaching him patterns, probabilities, and the quiet art of human psychology. That night, sitting at the dinner table with his parents, Warren quietly counted his earnings while his mother fussed over the evening meal. She noticed the careful way he stacked coins, the way he traced each nickel and dime with small, reverent gestures. "You're very meticulous," she said softly. Warren looked up, his eyes gleaming. "I'm just trying to understand it," he replied. In that moment, neither Howard nor Layla fully understood that their son's fascination with small transactions would one day scale into the world of stock markets, investments, and billion-dollar decisions. Warren's first venture was modest, but it planted the seed of something far larger. He realized that money wasn't just currency. It was information, a measure of human desire, patience, and decision-making. Each small sale was a data point, each customer reaction a signal, and each success or failure a lesson etched into his mind. By the time he returned home that evening, satchel empty but heart full, the boy from Omaha had learned something no textbook could teach: understanding human behavior, recognizing value, and acting with careful patience were skills that could outshine raw luck or brute effort. And so, as the city settled into the quiet of the evening, with lights flickering behind dusty windows and shadows stretching across cobblestone streets, Warren Buffett, at 6 years old, quietly began building the foundation of a mind that would one day see patterns where others only saw chaos, and opportunities where others only saw scarcity. By the time Warren Buffett reached the age of 8, money had become more than coins jingling in his pocket. It had become a language, a puzzle, and a lens through which he viewed the world. Omaha was still reeling from the Depression, every street a reminder that wealth and security were fragile. Yet Warren's young mind had begun to map patterns where adults only saw struggle. He watched his father Howard working long hours, meticulously analyzing the movements of markets, reading newspapers with furrowed brows, and talking quietly about investments in ways that made little sense to his peers but fascinated Warren. One rainy afternoon, Warren sat by the window, coins arranged in neat rows on the sill. The drops tapped rhythmically against the glass, like a metronome marking the passage of time. He picked up a nickel and imagined it growing, multiplying, transforming into more coins, more opportunities, more security. He thought about how his father would analyze a stock, weighing risk and reward, and he wondered, if he could just learn the rules, the world might not seem so daunting. That day, he decided to save every coin, every dollar he earned from his small ventures, and to track it carefully, like a scientist observing a crucial experiment. Warren began reading simple financial newspapers, circling numbers, drawing connections. The language was foreign, the concepts vast, but he had a hunger that refused to be satiated. Every paragraph became a puzzle, every table a secret waiting to be decoded. He would spend hours alone in his room, scribbling notes, creating imaginary portfolios, imagining himself making decisions that could impact lives, companies, and even cities. To most children, it would have seemed tedious, even obsessive. To Warren, it was exhilarating. But Warren's lessons weren't confined to numbers alone. He learned the human side of money early on. He observed the generosity of neighbors who shared meals despite scarcity, the quiet shame of those who had lost jobs, the pride in small businesses that survived against the odds. Money, he realized, was a reflection of human desire, fear, and resilience. Every transaction, every exchange was a story, a microcosm of life's larger game. He began to see that understanding people, not just numbers, was as important as counting coins. At school, Warren's curiosity set him apart. While classmates memorized simple arithmetic, Warren applied math to real-world scenarios. How much profit could he make if he sold extra bottles of soda at the corner store? What if he negotiated a better price for candy? Which neighbors were more likely to buy, and why? His notebooks filled with calculations, probabilities, and observations, each page a bridge between childhood curiosity and the early stirrings of a financial mind. One evening, Howard noticed his son intensely studying a ledger of his own creation. "Warren," he said, "you have to remember that money is just a tool. It's not everything." Warren looked up, eyes serious beyond his years. "I know, Dad, but I want to understand it. I want to see how it works, so I never have to worry about it." His father's heart ached with pride and a touch of worry. How many children would carry this kind of burden so early? But even Howard could see the spark of genius forming in the quiet, deliberate way his son engaged with the world. By 9, Warren had expanded his small ventures. He bought and sold stamps, coins, and other collectibles, learning supply and demand firsthand. Each purchase taught him patience. Each sale taught him timing. Each mistake was an indelible lesson. Warren's bedroom was cluttered with ledgers, coins, and scribbled notes. Yet to him, it was a laboratory, a place where ideas, risks, and rewards could be tested safely before applying them to the wider world. Through these experiences, Warren learned what no school could teach, that wealth was not merely about accumulation, but about understanding patterns, human behavior, and the invisible forces that moved markets. He discovered that patience often outweighed impulse, that careful observation could be more powerful than brute effort, and that small, consistent actions could create outcomes far greater than their initial size suggested. And so, in the quiet evenings of Omaha, amidst the sounds of rain on rooftops and the soft creak of his family's old wooden floors, the boy from Omaha was slowly learning the first, most critical lessons of his life, the lessons of money, patience, and the intricate dance between risk and reward. These were the lessons that would guide him, not just in business, but in every decision he would ever make. By the age of 11, Warren Buffett's curiosity about money had evolved into ambition. He had mastered the small trades, the local hustles, and the meticulous tracking of pennies earned, spent, and saved. But the world outside Omaha held bigger challenges, larger opportunities, real markets where fortunes were made and lost. One afternoon, leafing through his father's financial newspapers, Warren stumbled upon an ad that would change the trajectory of his life. A chance to buy shares of a local company. He stared at the numbers, the tiny percentages, the columns of fluctuating prices. To most adults, it was mundane. To Warren, it was a doorway. With a mixture of excitement and fear, he gathered his savings, the careful hoard of coins and small bills accumulated over years of door-to-door sales, candy trading, and neighborhood hustles. He had never felt such anticipation. Every coin he counted was a heartbeat, every dollar a step toward a future he could barely imagine. Finally, he made the call, placed the order, and bought his first stock. The transaction was small, almost trivial to the larger world, but to Warren, it was monumental. He had taken a step into a world governed not by chance, but by calculation, observation, and disciplined action. The first days were a whirlwind of emotion. Warren tracked every movement of the stock, analyzing the ups and downs, wondering if he had made a mistake, and fearing the loss of even a single dollar. Then came the inevitable dip. The price fell, steadily, unforgivingly. Warren panicked. He considered selling, reasoning that the money might be safer back in his piggy bank, or reinvested in something he already understood. With trembling hands, he sold the stock at a loss. In that moment, disappointment was heavy on his young shoulders, a sharp and unfamiliar taste of failure. Yet this early misstep became one of Warren's first profound lessons. Patience and timing often matter more than action itself. He realized that while the world could be unpredictable, hasty decisions often amplified risk. Observing the market, noting human behavior, and waiting for the right moment, these were skills that could not be rushed. That single loss etched into his mind a principle he would follow for the rest of his life. Never act out of fear. Act with knowledge and discipline. Warren did not allow disappointment to dim his fascination. Instead, he studied more aggressively. He read newspapers, analyzed companies, and began writing his own observations in a notebook he carried everywhere. Numbers were no longer abstract. They told stories, revealed patterns, and hinted at opportunity. Each fluctuation of a stock, each rise and fall, became a lesson in human psychology, risk management, and strategic thinking. Even his parents began to notice the intensity of his focus. "Warren," his mother once said, "you're too serious for your age." Warren smiled faintly, eyes glued to a page of notes. "I just want to understand, Mom. I want to know how it works, so when I grow up, I'm ready." Howard nodded quietly. He knew that this wasn't mere childhood curiosity. It was the formation of a disciplined, analytical mind. From this moment, Warren Buffett's life entered a new phase. The small streets of Omaha, the coins he counted, the candy he sold, they had all been practice. The first stock purchase, though fraught with fear and initial failure, was the real beginning of his journey into the complex world of investments. And while the stakes were small now, the lessons learned would become the foundation for a lifetime of strategic thinking, careful observation, and unshakable patience. Sitting by the window that evening, notebook open, coins counted, and calculations scribbled in the margins, the 11-year-old boy from Omaha felt a quiet surge of determination. The world was vast, uncertain, and intimidating, but he had already begun to see its hidden patterns. The journey had just begun, and Warren Buffett knew, even at that young age, that understanding these patterns might one day allow him to navigate life itself with the same precision, patience, and insight that had guided him through every small transaction of his early years. By the age of 15, Warren Buffett had already tasted the excitement and lessons of the stock market, but the world of investing still seemed like a vast, unpredictable ocean. He had learned from small successes and early mistakes that patience and careful observation were crucial, yet he sensed there was a deeper, more structured way to approach wealth, something that could turn instinct into a repeatable, reliable strategy. It was during this time that Warren discovered Benjamin Graham, a man whose ideas would leave an indelible mark on his life. Warren first encountered Graham's writings in a tattered copy of The Intelligent Investor, a book he found at a local library. The pages smelled faintly of old paper and ink, but to Warren, they were alive. Each sentence seemed to pulse with insight, each example a revelation. Graham wrote about value investing, about analyzing companies not as fleeting trends, but as assets with intrinsic worth. He emphasized patience, discipline, and a rational approach that ignored the noise and hysteria of the market. For Warren, this was not just theory. It was a mirror to the methods he had instinctively practiced since childhood. Sitting at his desk in the dim light of his Omaha home, Warren devoured the book page by page. He scribbled notes, underlined sentences, and created diagrams connecting ideas. The more he read, the more he realized that investing wasn't a gamble. It was a science, a methodical approach that rewarded preparation, discipline, and understanding. Graham's principles spoke to him in a way nothing else had. Here was someone who understood the patterns of human behavior, the psychology behind markets, and the art of turning knowledge into wealth. This period became transformative. Warren began applying Graham's teachings to his own mini portfolios. He analyzed stocks with a new lens, calculating intrinsic value, comparing it to market prices, and imagining the long-term outcomes. Each investment, each careful calculation, reinforced the idea that success was not about luck, but about disciplined thought, meticulous planning, and emotional control. Even when the market wavered or friends teased him for being obsessive, Warren remained steadfast, anchored by the principles he had learned from Graham. The influence went beyond finance. Graham's writings instilled in Warren a sense of patience that extended to life itself. He saw the virtue in delayed gratification, the importance of preparation, and the value of a steady, consistent approach. Whether it was saving money, choosing friendships, or dedicating time to study, Warren began to internalize the idea that careful, deliberate choices compounded over time into extraordinary results. By the time Warren was ready to leave high school, his understanding of value investing was far beyond his years. He wrote letters to Graham, seeking advice, absorbing every response with reverence. The correspondence was more than mentorship. It was a bridge into a world where disciplined thinking and rational decisions could overcome fear, uncertainty, and chaos. Warren knew that mastering this approach would not only make him wealthy, but would also teach him how to navigate life itself with clarity, purpose, and resilience. That year, Warren Buffett felt a quiet certainty settle in his mind. He was no longer merely a boy counting coins and selling gum. He was a student of human behavior, a strategist learning the intricate dance of risk and reward, and a young man beginning to see that the foundations of his extraordinary future were being laid with every lesson, every calculation, and every disciplined choice. And in the quiet evenings of Omaha, while most teenagers worried about trivial games or fleeting distractions, Warren Buffett was quietly building the principles, mindset, and moral compass that would guide him through decades of investing brilliance and life's complex challenges. By the time Warren Buffett entered his late teens, the world of numbers, coins, and small neighborhood ventures had expanded into something far larger. The universe of investing, guided by the principles of Benjamin Graham. Omaha streets still echoed with the hardships of the Depression's shadow, but Warren's mind was now alive with visions of opportunity, patterns, and the invisible currents that governed business and human behavior. The term value investing had become more than a phrase in a book. It was a lens through which he began to see the entire world. Value investing, as Graham described it, was the art of buying a company for less than its intrinsic worth and holding it patiently while the market realized its true value. To Warren, it was elegant and deceptively simple. Disciplined observation, careful analysis, and the courage to act against the crowd. Unlike speculation, which relied on rumor or fleeting trends, value investing demanded research, patience, and emotional fortitude. The lessons resonated deeply with him because they mirrored the instincts he had cultivated since childhood, from counting coins to selling gum and trading small goods. Warren spent hours poring over financial statements, annual reports, and balance sheets. Each page was a puzzle, a story waiting to be decoded. He calculated ratios, tracked earnings, and compared market prices to intrinsic value with meticulous precision. What fascinated him most was the human psychology behind the numbers, why investors overreacted, why fear and greed drove decisions, and how patience and logic could consistently outperform emotion. Omaha's quiet library became his sanctuary, filled with dusty books and worn ledgers that smelled faintly of ink and age. It was here, amid solitude and concentration, that Warren first began to see investing not as a gamble, but as a science. Even outside the library, the principles of value investing shaped his life. Warren observed local businesses and neighbors through the same analytical lens. A corner store's pricing strategy, a factory owner's inventory management, or a friend's decision to spend versus save. Everything was data, everything a lesson. By applying Graham's teachings to small-scale, real-world examples, Warren internalized the fundamental principle of value, that true worth often lies beneath the surface, unrecognized by the majority, waiting for those disciplined enough to see it. At 19, when Warren entered Columbia Business School to study directly under Benjamin Graham, he was already fluent in the language of value. He absorbed every lecture, asked piercing questions, and debated investment strategies with an intensity that astonished classmates. But what set him apart was not merely intellect, it was temperament. He had learned early that emotional control, patience, and disciplined reasoning were more important than clever tricks or flashy insights. Value investing for Warren was as much a philosophy of life as it was a method for building wealth. Through these years, Warren's modest life in Omaha continued, yet the boy who once sold gum door to door now dreamt in spreadsheets and ledgers, in probabilities and intrinsic worth. He saw opportunity in overlooked companies, potential where others saw risk, and patterns invisible to casual observers. Each calculated decision reinforced the lessons of patience, observation, and discipline, principles that would define his investing career and, ultimately, his legacy. By the end of his college years, Warren Buffett had transformed from a curious, observant child into a young investor with a clear framework, grounded philosophy, and unshakable confidence in the principles of value investing. He had discovered that wealth, like life, was not a matter of luck but of understanding, patience, and careful, deliberate action. And as he walked the streets of Omaha, the city of his youth, he knew that the foundation for something extraordinary had already been laid, brick by careful brick, in the quiet study of numbers, human behavior, and the timeless art of value. By the early 1950s, Warren Buffett had graduated from Columbia Business School, imbibed the lessons of Benjamin Graham, and honed a deep understanding of value investing. But knowledge alone was not enough. Warren was driven by a desire to put his ideas into action, to see if his disciplined approach could truly outperform the market. And so, in 1956, he took a bold step. He established Buffett Partnership Limited, a small investment partnership in Omaha, far from the bustling financial centers of New York or Chicago. The offices were humble, almost austere. A single desk, a few chairs, and a typewriter were the core of operations. Yet the simplicity belied ambition. Warren's vision was clear. He would pool modest sums from trusted investors, manage them with meticulous care, and invest only in businesses whose intrinsic value he understood thoroughly. Unlike many in the frenetic world of trading, he would ignore the noise, the daily fluctuations, and the hype. Patience, analysis, and a strict adherence to principle would be his tools. Convincing investors was not easy. Warren was still young, relatively unknown, and had no reputation beyond the careful calculations he had demonstrated in his studies. But his calm confidence, the clarity of his strategy, and the meticulousness of his research inspired trust. Friends, family, and a few bold acquaintances were willing to take a chance, giving him the capital that would serve as the seed for Buffett Partnership Limited. Every dollar entrusted to him was treated with reverence and care, a reflection of the lessons he had learned as a boy counting pennies and tracking every coin with obsessive precision. Warren's first investments under the partnership were deliberate and disciplined. He sought companies undervalued by the market, with strong fundamentals, competent management, and long-term potential. While others chased trends or speculated on short-term movements, Warren held steady, confident in his analysis. Each stock purchase was paired with detailed research, careful projections, and contingency planning. His letters to partners, written with clarity and candor, explained not only the financial rationale behind each decision, but also the temperament required to weather market fluctuations. The results were extraordinary. While many investors succumbed to panic during downturns, Warren's partnerships grew steadily. His capital compounded at a rate far exceeding market averages, validating his early principles of discipline, patience, and careful study. Yet for Warren, the success was never just about numbers. It was proof that rational, principled action, applied consistently over time, could overcome fear, greed, and impulsive behavior. It was a testament to the power of preparation, observation, and long-term thinking. Beyond the financial success, building Buffett Partnership Limited taught Warren valuable lessons about responsibility and trust. Each investment was not merely a transaction. It was a commitment to the partners who had placed their faith in him. Each decision carried moral weight, reinforcing his belief that ethics, patience, and discipline were inseparable from financial acumen. These formative years solidified his approach, merging Graham's philosophy with his own insights, creating a methodology that was uniquely Warren Buffett. By the time Buffett Partnership Limited had grown into a thriving enterprise, Warren was no longer just a boy from Omaha who counted coins and sold gum on street corners. He had transformed into a disciplined investor with a clear framework, a moral compass, and the uncanny ability to see opportunity where others saw only risk. And in the quiet streets of Omaha, amidst memories of his early ventures and childhood lessons, Warren Buffett's journey toward becoming one of the most extraordinary investors in history was firmly underway. In the early 1960s, Warren Buffett's investment ventures had grown steadily, but an opportunity appeared that would define the next chapter of his career: Berkshire Hathaway. Originally a struggling textile company, Berkshire Hathaway was undervalued in the eyes of the market, with assets and potential far exceeding its stock price. Where many investors saw decline and obsolescence, Warren saw intrinsic value, a classic chance to apply everything he had learned about disciplined, long-term investing. Warren began acquiring shares carefully, quietly, one step at a time. Each purchase was deliberate, backed by meticulous research and deep analysis of the company's finances, assets, and potential. He wasn't chasing a short-term gain. He was seeking the hidden worth, the margin of safety, that Benjamin Graham had always emphasized. Omaha's quiet streets might have seemed worlds away from the industrial mills of New England, but in Warren's mind, each detail mattered, each number told a story, and each decision had lasting consequences. The textile business was difficult, with slim margins and declining demand. Yet Warren's real vision wasn't to revitalize the mills. It was to transform Berkshire Hathaway into a holding company, a vehicle for acquiring other businesses and investments with far greater potential. This required patience, strategy, and the ability to ignore the noise of critics and short-term market fluctuations. Every move was calculated. Every step was a test of discipline, courage, and vision. As Warren slowly gained control of Berkshire Hathaway, he began applying the principles he had learned from his earliest ventures: thorough research, careful observation, and a long-term perspective. The transition was not sudden. Each acquisition, each decision, reflected his philosophy that value is often hidden, and the market's irrationality can be an advantage for those willing to wait and act wisely. Omaha's quiet, disciplined mindset was guiding these high-stakes, transformative decisions hundreds of miles away in the industrial Northeast. Warren's approach was revolutionary because it emphasized quality, patience, and understanding over speculation. He focused on companies with strong management, reliable earnings, and predictable cash flows. Berkshire Hathaway became more than a textile company. It became a holding ground for principled investments, a reflection of Warren's disciplined strategy and moral clarity. Each acquisition carried with it the weight of research, the insight of experience, and the lessons of countless early experiments in sales, coin counting, and small trades that had shaped him since childhood. The transformation of Berkshire Hathaway also revealed another critical lesson: the power of reputation and trust. Warren approached business with honesty, clarity, and ethical rigor. Partners and shareholders knew that every decision would be made carefully, thoughtfully, and with integrity. His early life in Omaha, observing scarcity, human behavior, and the delicate balance between risk and reward, had instilled in him a rare combination of analytical precision and moral responsibility. By the end of this transformative period, Warren Buffett had not only reshaped a struggling textile company into a platform for broader investment, but had also solidified his own identity as an investor. The boy from Omaha, who once counted coins and sold gum door to door, had learned how to see hidden potential, to act with discipline, and to remain steadfast in the face of uncertainty. Berkshire Hathaway became a living testament to everything he had learned about patience, observation, value, and trust, a foundation that would carry him into decades of unprecedented financial success. And in the quiet of his Omaha office, amidst ledgers, letters, and the calm hum of careful thought, Warren Buffett reflected the principles that had guided him from boyhood to mastery: a relentless curiosity, disciplined patience, and the unwavering belief that careful, principled action can create extraordinary outcomes in both life and business. By the mid-1960s, Warren Buffett had firmly established Berkshire Hathaway as a vehicle for disciplined, principled investing. Yet he knew that the real power of wealth and of financial success lay not in quick wins or flashy trades, but in patience, consistency, and the magical force of compounding. It was a lesson he had absorbed as a boy in Omaha, counting coins and tracking small profits, and now it was becoming the guiding principle of a much larger enterprise. Compounding, in Warren's mind, was more than math. It was a philosophy of life. The small, repeated actions of disciplined saving, careful investment, and patient observation could snowball into something extraordinary over time. He had seen it in his early ventures: how modest profits from gum sales or penny stocks, carefully reinvested, could grow steadily. Now, with Berkshire Hathaway, the scale was larger, but the principle remained the same: consistent, intelligent actions over long periods create results far beyond initial expectations. Warren instilled this philosophy in every decision he made. Each investment was chosen not for immediate gain, but for its potential to grow steadily over years, even decades. When others panicked during market downturns, he remained calm, knowing that temporary volatility was irrelevant to long-term value. Like a gardener tending to seedlings, Warren nurtured his investments patiently, understanding that the passage of time, combined with compounding growth, would yield results far greater than any short-term speculation. In his letters to partners, Warren often emphasized this principle. "The key to investing," he wrote, "is patience. Don't be swayed by daily market noise. Focus on the underlying value and let time do the work." His own life mirrored this advice. Warren avoided hasty decisions, rarely acted out of fear or greed, and consistently applied his analytical rigor to every choice. Compounding, both in finance and in personal development, became a mantra. Small, intelligent actions repeated with consistency were more powerful than sporadic brilliance. The Omaha streets where Warren had once sold candy and counted pennies became a quiet classroom for the principle of compounding. Every early venture taught him the same truth: success rarely happens overnight. It grows slowly, steadily, nurtured by observation, diligence, and careful planning. The difference between fleeting profit and enduring wealth, he realized, was time, the ability to wait, to learn, and to act strategically when opportunity arose. Even as Berkshire Hathaway acquired larger companies, the principle held. Investments were measured, cautious, and long-term focused. Warren understood that true wealth wasn't just about money. It was about foresight, discipline, and the quiet mastery of patience. The most successful decisions were those that required waiting, resisting impulse, and trusting that careful observation and intelligence would ultimately prevail. Through this period, Warren Buffett's reputation grew not only as a brilliant investor, but as a patient, disciplined strategist. He taught partners, colleagues, and future generations that compounding was not merely a mathematical concept, but a way of approaching life and business. Respect time, invest wisely, and allow small, consistent efforts to multiply into extraordinary results. By the late 1960s, Warren had transformed the boyhood lessons of coin counting, candy sales, and small ventures into a lifelong philosophy. Patience and compounding were no longer abstract ideas. They were the foundation of every investment, every decision, and every vision he pursued. The boy from Omaha had learned that wealth is not a product of luck or impulsive action, but of thoughtful, consistent, patient effort. The quiet power of time and intelligent persistence shaping extraordinary outcomes. Even the most disciplined investor encounters missteps, and Warren Buffett was no exception. By the 1970s, his reputation as a meticulous, patient, and disciplined strategist was solidifying. Yet he knew that mistakes were inevitable, valuable, if approached with honesty and introspection. For Warren, every error was a lesson, a chance to refine his methods, and a test of his resilience and character. One of his early mistakes in Berkshire Hathaway involved an acquisition that seemed promising on paper, but faltered due to overlooked details. The company's management, initially perceived as competent, struggled to maintain operational efficiency. The stock, which Warren had believed undervalued, remained stagnant. Observing the results, Warren did not panic, but he did take responsibility. He dissected every assumption, every calculation, and every decision that had led to the misjudgment. Each failure became a classroom, teaching him humility, patience, and the importance of thorough due diligence. Warren also recognized that mistakes were emotional challenges. A failed investment could evoke regret, frustration, or self-doubt, yet he understood that reacting impulsively was the real danger. Instead, he maintained his disciplined approach: analyze calmly, learn objectively, and avoid repeating the same error. This mindset transformed mistakes into stepping stones, rather than obstacles. For Warren, failure was not a mark of inadequacy. It was a source of growth and refinement. Even as Berkshire Hathaway expanded into multiple sectors, Warren applied the same philosophy to every decision, big or small. Whether it was choosing a company to acquire, evaluating a manager, or assessing market trends, he scrutinized every angle and welcomed lessons from past errors. This process was meticulous, almost surgical. He would revisit decisions years later, asking, "Did I act rationally? Did I consider all variables? Was my emotional response interfering with logic?" In doing so, he continuously evolved his understanding of investing and human behavior. Warren's approach to mistakes extended beyond finance. He embraced personal and professional errors as part of a continuous learning journey. From negotiations that went poorly to partnerships that underperformed expectations, he viewed life as a series of experiments, some successful, some instructive in their failure. He learned to separate ego from analysis, understanding that humility and reflection were as crucial to success as intelligence and strategy. This philosophy of learning from mistakes also shaped his communication. In letters to partners, Warren often shared not only successes but failures, analyzing them openly. He believed that transparency and candid reflection fostered trust and reinforced the principle that every setback was an opportunity to learn. Young investors and colleagues were encouraged to see mistakes not as shameful, but as essential tools for growth, innovation, and resilience. By the end of this period, Warren Buffett's mastery of failure had become a cornerstone of his character. He knew that even the brightest minds falter, but the ability to analyze, adapt, and persist distinguished the truly successful. The boy from Omaha, who once learned from lost coins, miscalculated candy profits, and small neighborhood trades, had transformed these lessons into a profound understanding. Mistakes are inevitable, but how you respond defines the trajectory of your life and your success. Through disciplined reflection, humble acknowledgement, and persistent learning, Warren reinforced his principle that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the journey toward it. And in every misstep, he discovered the tools to sharpen judgment, refine strategy, and strengthen both his investment decisions and his character for the decades to come. By the late 1970s, Warren Buffett had amassed decades of experience in investing, yet one principle emerged above all others: the importance of choosing quality businesses. While many investors chased trends, speculated on price swings, or sought instant profits, Warren had learned that enduring wealth came from owning companies with strong fundamentals, capable management, and long-term potential. This principle became the cornerstone of his strategy and defined the way Berkshire Hathaway would operate for decades. Warren's approach was deeply analytical, but also profoundly human. He studied not only balance sheets and income statements, but the people running the businesses. Leadership mattered. Integrity mattered. Consistency mattered. A great business, Warren believed, could weather economic storms, adapt to changing conditions, and reward patient shareholders over decades. A mediocre business, no matter how cheap its stock price, was rarely worth the risk. This philosophy reflected lessons he had learned as a boy observing human behavior. People, character, and trust were as important as numbers. The process was meticulous. Warren and his team would analyze every aspect of a potential acquisition: the stability of earnings, the company's competitive advantage, the clarity of its strategy, and the ethics and skill of its managers. Every decision was filtered through his dual lens of value and quality. He knew that paying a fair price for a great company was better than seeking a bargain in mediocrity. This approach demanded patience, discipline, and the courage to wait for the right opportunity. Warren's selection process also required a deep understanding of industry dynamics. He looked for businesses with durable competitive advantages, economic moats, as he called them, whether in branding, cost structure, or customer loyalty. He studied market cycles, evaluated risks, and projected growth with a disciplined eye. Each investment had to pass rigorous scrutiny, because Warren understood that compounding value over decades required certainty and quality, not speculation. The choice of quality businesses shaped Berkshire Hathaway's identity. From insurance companies to consumer goods firms, Warren accumulated holdings that were stable, profitable, and managed by capable teams. This portfolio approach allowed Berkshire to generate predictable cash flow, reinvest intelligently, and withstand market volatility with resilience. Unlike many contemporaries who chased short-term gains, Warren embraced a philosophy of patience, trust, and rigorous standards. Beyond finance, choosing quality businesses reflected Warren's worldview. Value and excellence in any field are rare, precious, and worth cultivating. The boy from Omaha who once assessed neighborhoods for candy sales now assessed entire industries, applying the same careful observation, disciplined evaluation, and moral reasoning. Every decision reinforced his belief that sustainable success is built on substance, not hype, character, not convenience, and patience, not impulsiveness. By mastering the art of selecting quality businesses, Warren Buffett created a system where disciplined judgment, ethical clarity, and strategic patience converged. This principle would allow him not only to grow wealth steadily over decades, but also to become a model for investors worldwide, demonstrating that intelligent, principled choices consistently outperform speculative frenzy. In every acquisition, every decision, and every careful calculation, the boy from Omaha's lessons of observation, patience, and disciplined thought had come full circle, shaping one of the most remarkable investing careers in history. By the 1980s, Warren Buffett had transformed from a disciplined young investor into a legendary figure in the financial world. Yet despite his wealth and influence, one principle remained at the heart of his philosophy: the power of reputation. Warren understood, better than most, that trust, integrity, and credibility were the most valuable assets an individual could possess, far surpassing even money or market influence. Reputation, he believed, was the foundation upon which long-term success was built. From his early days in Omaha, Warren had observed human behavior closely. He had seen the consequences of dishonesty, the fragility of trust, and the long-lasting impact of ethical lapses. He remembered small neighborhood transactions, deals with friends, and lessons from family about honesty and character. These lessons formed the bedrock of his approach. Every promise kept, every honest assessment, every transparent communication reinforced credibility that could not be bought or replaced. In the corporate world, reputation became a strategic advantage. Business partners, shareholders, and managers learned that Warren Buffett's word was reliable, his analysis thorough, and his intentions principled. This trust allowed him to negotiate deals, acquire companies, and form partnerships with remarkable efficiency. Executives willingly provided complete transparency because they knew that Warren valued integrity above all else. This credibility, earned painstakingly over decades, was an asset that compounded like capital, growing stronger with each ethical choice and careful decision. Buffett also leveraged his reputation to educate and inspire others. His letters to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders were widely read, not for flashy predictions or market speculation, but for their honesty, clarity, and candid reflections. He shared successes, acknowledged mistakes, and imparted wisdom without pretense. In doing so, he built a reputation not only as a brilliant investor, but as a teacher, mentor, and example of principled leadership. His words carried weight because people trusted that they reflected reality and not spin. Reputation, Warren realized, also required protection. One misstep, one compromise in ethics, could erode decades of credibility. He approached every negotiation, investment, and public statement with mindfulness, recognizing that long-term trust was far more valuable than short-term gain. Even when opportunities arose that could provide immediate profit, he often refused them if they risked compromising his integrity. This disciplined restraint reinforced his legacy and allowed him to navigate complex financial and social landscapes with confidence and respect. On a personal level, Warren's reputation shaped his relationships and life philosophy. Friends, colleagues, and employees knew that they could rely on his guidance and judgment. Communities respected him not merely for his wealth, but for his ethical consistency, humility, and generosity. Warren understood that wealth without integrity is hollow. Reputation, once built, opens doors that money alone cannot. By the end of this period, the boy from Omaha had internalized a profound truth. Success is measured not just by financial achievement, but by the trust and respect of others. Every calculated investment, every careful partnership, and every principled decision reinforced his standing in a world where credibility was more valuable than gold. Warren Buffett's journey had shown that reputation is a compounding asset. It grows steadily, strengthens over time, and becomes an enduring legacy that transcends wealth, status, and fleeting market fluctuations. By the 1990s, Warren Buffett's success had reached extraordinary heights. Berkshire Hathaway had grown into a financial powerhouse, and his investments had multiplied beyond what most could imagine. Yet, amid immense wealth, Warren never lost sight of an essential truth instilled in him as a boy growing up in Omaha. True value in life is measured not just by what you accumulate, but by what you give back. This principle became a defining aspect of his legacy, guiding both his personal and professional decisions. Buffett's understanding of giving back was deeply philosophical, rooted in empathy and responsibility. He recalled the lessons of his youth, the importance of community, the respect for hard work, and the awareness of life's fragility. He remembered seeing neighbors struggle during hard times, witnessing small businesses close, and noting how chance and circumstance often dictated opportunities. This awareness fostered a sense of moral obligation. Wealth, when responsibly managed, should serve a higher purpose beyond personal gain. Philanthropy for Warren was not an afterthought or a PR strategy. It was a disciplined commitment. Much like his approach to investing, he began pledging significant portions of his fortune to causes that could make tangible, long-term impacts. Education, healthcare, and public welfare became focal points. Each contribution was carefully considered, ensuring that it would not only address immediate needs, but also empower institutions and communities to thrive independently. He saw giving back as an investment in humanity, where returns were measured not in dollars, but in lives improved, opportunities created, and hope restored. Warren also approached philanthropy with strategic thinking. Just as he assessed businesses for intrinsic value, he evaluated charities and causes for efficiency, transparency, and sustainable impact. He believed in the compounding effect of generosity. A well-placed gift could create ripple effects, multiplying benefits over decades. For Warren, giving was an extension of his investing philosophy. Careful study, long-term vision, and disciplined execution applied to the betterment of society rather than the accumulation of wealth. This commitment to giving shaped Buffett's personal narrative and inspired others in the financial world. He partnered with like-minded philanthropists, advocated for responsible wealth management, and encouraged other billionaires to pledge significant portions of their fortunes to society. His words and actions highlighted a principle that often contrasts sharply with the pursuit of wealth for its own sake. Success is not complete unless it enriches the lives of others. Even in his daily life, Warren demonstrated humility and intentionality. He maintained a simple lifestyle in Omaha, lived modestly, and remained deeply connected to the communities that had shaped him. He taught by example that the true measure of wealth is not opulence, but the positive influence one can exert through knowledge, resources, and principled action. This philosophy resonated far beyond finance, offering lessons in ethics, responsibility, and the human capacity for good. By the end of this period, the boy from Omaha, once obsessed with counting coins and maximizing small profits, had internalized the full arc of wealth's purpose. Success, Warren realized, is a combination of disciplined action, ethical integrity, and the conscious choice to uplift others. The art of giving back became as integral to his identity as investing itself, proving that a life well lived intertwines personal achievement with the lasting betterment of humanity. By the early 2000s, Warren Buffett had achieved legendary status as one of the world's greatest investors, but he never allowed success to make him insular. Instead, he embraced another mission: mentorship and teaching. For Warren, knowledge without sharing was incomplete, and the principles that had guided him since boyhood, the lessons of patience, discipline, ethical integrity, and careful observation, were too valuable to remain private. He dedicated himself to educating not just future investors, but anyone willing to learn from experience and reflection. Buffett's approach to mentorship was deeply personal and intentional. He wrote letters, held meetings, and engaged with young professionals and entrepreneurs with genuine curiosity. Unlike many who taught theory alone, Warren shared lived experience, his failures, successes, strategies, and philosophies. He emphasized the importance of understanding human behavior, the psychology of markets, and the moral responsibilities that accompany wealth. Lessons were not abstract. They were vivid, practical, and rooted in decades of disciplined observation and practice. In one-on-one meetings, Warren's teaching style was both candid and compassionate. He listened carefully, asking questions that encouraged critical thinking and introspection. He challenged assumptions without belittling, illustrated complex concepts with real-life stories, and encouraged ments to observe patterns in their own experiences. Every lesson was reinforced with clarity, humor, and humility. He knew that learning is as much about character as intellect, and he sought to cultivate both in those he mentored. Beyond personal mentorship, Warren used public forums and shareholder letters as platforms to teach a wider audience. His letters were read eagerly worldwide, not for stock tips or speculation, but for wisdom distilled from a lifetime of disciplined practice. He emphasized long-term thinking, ethical behavior, and the power of compounding, not only in finance but in life. Each letter was a lesson in observation, patience, and decision-making, accessible to anyone willing to absorb its principles. Warren's mentorship also highlighted the value of humility. Despite his fame, he remained approachable, attributing much of his success to early lessons learned in Omaha and the guidance of Benjamin Graham. He often emphasized that knowledge is cumulative, built over years through observation, reflection, and disciplined action. He encouraged ments to embrace curiosity, welcome mistakes as learning opportunities, and focus on consistent, principled effort rather than chasing instant success. Through mentorship, Warren extended the impact of his life far beyond his personal achievements. The boy from Omaha, who had once absorbed lessons from small trades, neighborhood observations, and early stock experiments, had transformed these experiences into principles that could guide generations. He showed that true success is measured not only by wealth, but by the knowledge and wisdom passed on, by the ability to inspire others to think critically, act ethically, and pursue excellence with patience and integrity. By the end of this period, mentorship had become a central pillar of Warren Buffett's identity. He demonstrated that teaching is not just about imparting knowledge. It is about nurturing character, instilling discipline, and creating a legacy that transcends financial achievement. The lessons of patience, observation, and ethical action, learned on the streets of Omaha, had now rippled outward, shaping minds and influencing lives across the globe. As Warren Buffett entered the later decades of his life, the boy from Omaha had transformed into a man whose impact stretched far beyond investments or financial success. Every principle he had learned as a child, patience, discipline, careful observation, ethical integrity, and a deep respect for human behavior, had been refined, tested, and applied across decades of life, business, and philanthropy. His legacy was no longer merely the wealth he accumulated. It was the philosophy he lived by and shared with the world. Omaha remained a quiet backdrop to this extraordinary journey, a reminder of where it all began, the small town streets where he counted coins, sold gum, and experimented with small ventures. Those formative experiences had instilled a keen understanding of value, the power of compounding, and the subtle lessons of human nature. Every early mistake, every lesson learned from humble trades, and every risk taken with careful calculation had shaped a man who now influenced millions. Buffett's legacy was built on more than financial genius. It was defined by an unwavering commitment to ethics, responsibility, and giving back. The billions he pledged to philanthropy were not merely donations, they were investments in humanity, in education, health, and opportunity. Each gift reflected his belief that wealth carries moral responsibility, and that true success is measured by how much one contributes to improving the lives of others. The power of giving, carefully considered and thoughtfully executed, became a hallmark of his life. Mentorship amplified this legacy. Warren had touched countless lives with his wisdom, humility, and insights, teaching not only investing but life principles. He showed that patience, long-term thinking, ethical integrity, and disciplined action are universal truths, applicable far beyond the stock market. His letters, speeches, and personal interactions became timeless lessons, creating a ripple effect that extended the impact of his Omaha upbringing to the world stage. Even in the sphere of investing, his influence was monumental. The principles of value investing, carefully selecting quality businesses, and maintaining patience through volatility became guiding lights for generations of investors. Berkshire Hathaway, once a struggling textile company, had grown into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, a testament to decades of disciplined decision-making, adherence to principle, and thoughtful, ethical action. Warren's approach proved that long-term vision, rational analysis, and moral consistency could outperform impulsive, speculative strategies. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of Warren Buffett's legacy was the example he set as a human being. Despite immense wealth and fame, he lived modestly, remained approachable, and prioritized relationships, trust, and integrity over personal gain. He embodied the philosophy that true greatness lies not only in accomplishments, but in character, in the way one treats others, and in the lasting positive influence one leaves behind. As the boy from Omaha looked back on a life spanning decades of learning, investing, and giving, the trajectory was clear. Success is not a momentary triumph, but a lifelong journey of disciplined action, reflection, and principled choices. Every small coin counted, every observation made, every ethical decision upheld, and every lesson shared contributed to a legacy that transcends time. In the end, Warren Buffett's story reminds the world that extraordinary impact begins in ordinary places. From a curious boy in a quiet Nebraska town to a global icon of wisdom, philanthropy, and disciplined investing, the journey of the boy from Omaha exemplifies the power of vision, patience, ethics, and persistence. His legacy is a living testament that true greatness is built not only through intellect and strategy, but through character, giving, and the relentless pursuit of long-term value in all aspects of life. Warren Buffett's journey from a curious boy in Omaha to a legendary investor is filled with vocabulary and expressions you can learn naturally. Discipline, the ability to stay focused and consistent over time. Warren's success was built on discipline, not impulsive decisions. Example: his discipline in analyzing investments made all the difference. Compounding, growth that accumulates over time, like interest on interest. Buffett's wealth shows the power of compounding. Example: even small investments can grow enormously through compounding. Intrinsic value, the true, inherent worth of something. Buffett focused on the intrinsic value of companies, not their market price. Example: invest in businesses whose intrinsic value exceeds the current stock price. Margin of safety, a buffer that reduces risk. Warren always sought investments with a margin of safety. Example: buying undervalued stocks provides a margin of safety in volatile markets. Ethical integrity, acting with honesty and strong moral principles. Buffett's reputation was built on ethical integrity. Example: his ethical integrity earned him trust from investors worldwide. Patience and long-term thinking, the ability to wait for the right opportunity. Example: patience allowed Warren to see opportunity where others saw risk. Principled action, making decisions based on strong values rather than short-term gains. Example: every investment reflected his principled action and careful analysis. Resilience, the capacity to recover from setbacks. Warren's mistakes became lessons because of resilience. Example: resilience turned failures into stepping stones for growth. These expressions are not just financial terms, they're life skills. You can use them to describe any situation where patience, value, and careful thinking matter. Discipline beats impulse. Consistent effort, research, and principled decision-making always outperform impulsive actions. Apply discipline to your studies, career, or personal growth. Patience compounds success. Just like money grows with compounding, your skills, habits, and knowledge multiply when nurtured consistently over time. Learn from mistakes. Failure is not the end. It's an opportunity to reflect, adjust, and improve. Embrace setbacks as lessons. Choose quality over convenience. Focus on things, people, and opportunities that have long-term value. Quick wins may not last, but quality endures. Ethics and reputation matter more than wealth. True success is measured by trust, integrity, and the positive impact you leave behind, not just by numbers. From a small boy counting pennies on the quiet streets of Omaha to a man whose influence reshaped investing, philanthropy, and mentorship, Warren Buffett's story is a testament to the extraordinary power of discipline, patience, and principled action. Remember, the choices you make today, grounded in integrity and foresight, will define your tomorrow. Every small effort, every moment of learning, every principled decision compounds into the life you envision. Let this story inspire you not just to pursue wealth, but to pursue wisdom, character, and a legacy that empowers others. The boy from Omaha teaches us that ordinary beginnings can lead to extraordinary lives if we act with patience, learn from every mistake, and never compromise our values. Your journey is waiting. Start building it today.